participants joining us today. You all do have the ability to unmute yourself. Please be a little conscientious about that ability. You can also use the chat window to type your questions, and Paul is monitoring that.
Sure am.
We're 1 minute after the hour. Well, it's up to you, Paul. You want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, we'll get started. Otherwise, I'm going to probably run way over time today. So I appreciate everyone that's joined today. I understand that this is probably not the best time zone for most people, as I'm from Australia and my local time is 9:02 a.m. So fairly early in the day for me, probably the opposite end of the day for most people that would be attending Knowledge 2020. So just out of interest, if I could get the chat just to let me know what country you're from, so I can get a feel of the kind of audience that I have today, where we're all from, just type it in the chat. Texas, awesome. We've got Australia, probably guess one of my colleagues, Canada, excellent. All right, I'll get this underway. So today I'm going to be talking all about automated testing and my journey with automated testing on the ServiceNow platform and how community has helped me kind of guide me down that path over time. So we've got mostly North America today, North America and Australia. All right, cool. So I'm from an Australian company called Kinetic IT. Kinetic IT is a managed service provider company. So we come in and we run service desks and like desktops and enterprise services generally. And when we come into a customer, we usually either implement or support ServiceNow, as it's just such a good platform. Nothing really beats it. So that's how I got into ServiceNow myself. I started on Service Desk using ITSM products, used to use HP Service Desk, and then I moved into Service Manager and then ServiceNow. And when I got into ServiceNow, I never looked back. So since then, the last 7 years, I've pretty much been exclusively working on the ServiceNow platform. And my interests have really been in automated testing and enterprise service management solutions. Achievements, I've been a lead developer on multiple ServiceNow implementations using agile methodologies, usually delivering an ITSM solution. And I've had the opportunity to recently do a customer service management solution as well. Customer service management is now pretty much as big as ITSM. It's huge and it's getting bigger. It's a really cool product. And in 2020, I was awarded with a community MVP award, which was really cool. Current projects, I've just finished another implementation of ITSM for a local government agency and look forward to the next one. And I've now been with Kinetic IT for 10 years. And Kinetic IT is a sales, services, and technology partner. Right, so agenda for today, talk about my journey with automated testing throughout my ServiceNow career, talk a little bit about the automated testing framework, some of the use cases that ATF addresses, ATF being the automated testing framework, some of the challenges that come with ATF, and then I'm going to give a demo on some of the functionality that I built on top of ATF to make it easier to write test cases. So just before I start, if anyone is not familiar with ATF, if they don't know what it does or what it is, can you put so in the chat? Because if I don't have to cover it, it means I can cover more of the cool stuff. But if you're unfamiliar with it, if anyone is unfamiliar with it, I would like to give you a little background primer on it. So unless someone shouts out saying that they don't know what ATF is and they want an introduction, I'll probably skip over that slide so I can spend more time doing a demonstration. I like to try and personalize this to the audience as much as I can. So the three things that I would like everyone to learn today, I guess, is a bit of a broader history of automated testing on the Now platform. ATF didn't always exist. Being on the tool for 7 years, for most of that time, ATF did not exist. What some of the use cases are for using ATF and how to get the most out of ATF. So my journey with automated testing. So back in 2013 was when my ServiceNow journey began. I went on a implementation boot camp. I got to fly over to Melbourne to do that with my colleagues. That was a lot of fun. Melbourne's on the east coast of Australia, probably the most kind of hipster city in Australia. Great coffee, great food, all that kind of thing. And I joined a ServiceNow development team, just doing day-to-day enhancements to the tool. There was a project going on at the same time to implement a self-service system for the customer. And as I was fairly new to ServiceNow at that stage, I got put on the testing team. So I helped the testers test this self-service portal rather than developing. So that gave me an interesting insight into what it actually is like to be a tester and finding defects, and a lot of the challenges that come with testing, a lot of the repetition, a lot of the changing requirements. It was quite an eye-opening experience to see what it's like to be a tester. And that really started my interest in automated testing when in 2014, my technical lead asked me to start looking into automated testing. So I used that as a business case to attend Knowledge 14. I wrote up a business case, sent it to my manager, outlining that I wanted to go to this big conference in San Francisco to learn all about testing. So luckily, the business accepted that business case, and I went to Knowledge 14, where I walked around the main pavilion floor, talking to all the big partners, asking all of them and anyone I could find, are you doing automated testing? If you are, what are you doing? Lots of people had their own kind of little custom solutions, but there wasn't really anything that was consistent across the board. And it seemed like no one was really talking to each other. There wasn't really quite yet the community around automated testing that there is now. So I just found it amazing. I had such a great time and I learned so much that I decided to build my own little testing utility after that in 2014. There was a little testing utility written by a ServiceNow employee. I'm not sure if he still works for ServiceNow, but it was just a basic kind of code unit testing little application that was up on community, on the old community. So I tried to find the update set prior to this presentation, but I just could not find it. And I was still fair in my kind of developer infancy on the ServiceNow platform. So I really needed a framework to work on. So I started to build a GUI around the automated testing application that was on the community and just tinkering with it, building more and more on top of it. And then when application scoping was introduced, I rebuilt the entire thing from the ground up. By that stage, I'd learned enough about ServiceNow and the APIs to feel comfortable with creating my own application. And I wanted to share what I had created with the wider community and contribute to creating a community of automated testing. So I wrote up a presentation and sent it in for submission, and it got accepted. And I spoke at Knowledge 16 about automated testing and demonstrated the app that I had made. There's me up on the pedestal there. At the end of my presentation, there seemed to be so much interest in what I had shown, and I already had it in an application scope. So I decided that it might be cool to put it on the store. So I managed to convince my company for us to sign up and be technology partners, and started building this application for the store. So there was many hours after work that I spent on this because I had a day job as well. I was really passionate about it, so it wasn't hard. It was something that I really wanted to do and refine my coding skills. So during that time, there was a community call for a request for use cases for automated testing, which was kind of exciting, I suppose, but I didn't know where it was going, what that was all about. And then a little bit later in the year, a former colleague shared a video of the automated testing framework with me. So it was interesting to learn that it wasn't just me that had this good idea. ServiceNow were there as well. So at that point, we just wanted to get the application certified and on the store. We put it up there for free as can't really compete with automated test framework. It's just too powerful, doesn't have the limitations of being in an application scope like my app did. And then, so yeah, the video, we got it certified, we got it up on the store. And then in 2017, ATF was released to the world. And that's really what changed everything from that point. So we all know what ATF is. We don't have anyone in the chat that doesn't know what it is. So I'm just going to skip over that slide. I'm going to talk to some of the use cases around ATF. So while I'm talking about the use case, I would just love in the chat if anyone could shout out if they're using ATF at the moment, and maybe a few words as to what you're doing with ATF right now while I cover these use cases off. So for me, the 4 primary use cases that automated test framework addresses is, well, number 1, it automates a manual and otherwise manual testing process. Number 2, which the next 3 kind of lead off number 1. Once if you can automate your testing, you can therefore speed up upgrades, because when you apply your upgrade, you can do your testing quicker. Number 3 is that it can be used like it is in software in general to reduce defects. It's not really geared up for test-driven development, although you could use that for script includes. It's more for regression. Once you've got a automated regression bed, you can run it. And if your regression fails, then you know you've got a defect. So you can reduce defects because you can test more often. And number 4, it's quite handy to measure deviations from out of the box, as ServiceNow comes with tests for all their out of the box. So you can run the out of the box test against your instance and see how far you've deviated from out of the box. So for me, those are the 4 primary use cases for automated testing framework. If anyone else has any other use cases that they would like to share, feel free to put that in the chat. So it sounds like most of the audience here have maybe played around with ATF, or they're keen to start using it, but we don't have anyone that's a expert. It looks that's been using it for a while. We've just got a few people that have tattled with it. All right, cool. So these are the main use cases for ATF. How do we get the most out of ATF? So in my experience, the best way to get the most out of ATF is to use it for the purposes of regression testing. So that is just having a current state of your system that you accept is a correct current state, and then mapping that current state into a set of tests that you can then run to validate that the expected state is as expected, I suppose. So an example in use case number 2 is doing upgrades. It doesn't necessarily have to be an upgrade. It could be any substantial system change, which an upgrade generally is. So build ATF tests to represent the current state. You say, I accept that the way the system is functioning now is correct. You write those test cases, you execute and refine them until they're all passing, and then you migrate those tests up to production as you normally would with any development change. And then performing an upgrade You would then perform a environment refresh. You would clone production down to your sub-production environments. Your tests would come with that. Run them again to make sure that your regression tests are still all valid, and then upgrade ServiceNow. And then finally, you re-execute those tests that represent the expected state, and that will bring the failures straight up to the top rather than needing to wait for testers to manually go in and find those failures. And bringing the defects to the top instantly allows you to fix them very, very quickly and bring down your upgrade time quite significantly, because you've just turned what could be like 2 weeks of testing into 2 days, as an example, and fix those defects right away and really decrease that window of time for that upgrade. So it all sounds pretty good, right? It almost sounds too good to be true. Is it really that easy? What's the catch? So there are some challenges, just as there are challenges with everything in life. There are 3 key challenges that I've identified with my experience using ATF is the technical knowledge that's required to use ATF. You don't need to be a developer expert, but you do need to be familiar with the terminologies, what a UI action is, what a mandatory field is, what a read-only field is. You need to be able to do some basic ServiceNow queries using the query builder. So you do need to know a little bit, and it's generally, I'd say you probably would need at least a good 6 months on the platform with like a regular usage of the platform. And in my experience, generally it ends up falling to the developer to write those tests because they already have the knowledge of the platform. And that's less than ideal because developers are very busy and there's other things that they want to do. Not only that, it takes a while to set up a regression bed. It does depend on how much you want to target and how exhaustive you want it to be, but it does take time to set up at the start, just like any automated testing solution. And time is money. And the third challenge is opportunity cost, which ties in with challenge 1. So developer, he likes building cool stuff, and the customer likes it when they build cool stuff to solve business problems. So there's the opportunity cost that the developer's spending time to write tests, which could have otherwise been spent configuring ServiceNow or building functionality to solve business problems. So those challenges do make it quite difficult to justify to a customer to set up ATF in the first place. And I really wanted to solve these challenges to get more customers using ATF. And this is still a challenge. And I haven't completely solved all of this, but I wanted to uplift ATF to make it a little bit better. So how do we solve these challenges in ServiceNow when the platform doesn't quite do what the business wants them to do? What do us developers do? We build on the platform and extend it to solve the business needs. So that's what I did in this case. I extended ATF by building my own application on top of it. I can tell already that I'm already 5 minutes behind where I wanted to be. Wanted to start the demo 5 minutes ago, so I will be going over today. So I built an application that I called Regress, short for regression, ATF recorder, which automates the generation of test cases. So essentially what it does is it just records the current state of the form when you submit it and converts that into test steps. At the moment, it supports things like field state, user-populated fields, changed fields, and UI action visibility. Because generally, I found when I was writing tests, they were almost always the same thing. It was like open a record, populate some fields, check which fields are mandatory, read-only, visible, etc. Check that certain fields change correctly, like if you change impact and urgency, check that the priority is set accordingly, and that those fields could be changed, and which UI actions were visible. So it was the same thing over and over, so I thought, surely we can automate this. Most of the API is already there to determine these things, except for UI action visibility, but I got there in the end. So essentially just translated the form state at the point of submission into test steps. Also added a few extra features like determining similar records for retest. So if you open an existing record in the test, it won't try open that record exactly, but it will try find a similar record for retest. Or if you navigate to a record that was previously created in another test step output, it will automatically link it together. And some basic support for service catalog forms, including service portal. And that's one of the things that customers really care about when an upgrade is they don't want their service portal broken. They don't want their service catalog broken. So being able to do this for service portal, service catalog makes it a lot easier to justify spending the time. And it really doesn't take much time anymore. So the fun part, demonstration of my little utility. Alrighty, so just logging into my ServiceNow developer instance. I'll just make everything a little bit bigger. I just bought a 4K monitor on the weekend. So just gonna type in regress here in the application navigator, make this full screen. So this is my little application here. The important bit, the ATF recorder. So I've got a few different modes of recording. Got actions only, which only records the actions that you take for when you want to do some pre-work and then test an output at the end. You don't really care what fields are mandatory, read only, etc. You just want to record the actions. There's simple mode.
I'm not seeing anything except for the slide. I don't know if you're actually sharing
Okay.
demo or not, but
thanks for letting me know there. Yeah, because I only shared the PowerPoint. Thank you. All right, just bear with me for a second. Pause share, new share. It's not the first time I did that, and it won't be the last. So here, can everyone see it now?
No, try unsharing and sharing again.
Okay, here we go. This should work now.
There you go.
Here we go. All right, cool. So just looking at the application navigator at the moment on the side here, the modes I was talking about, actions only, simple, just covers kind of a light version of regression where it checks for, I guess, more of the positive cases. Are things visible? Are things mandatory? And then exhaustive checks absolutely everything. Every field that's visible, every field that's not visible, every button that isn't showing, every button that is showing, etc. So I'm just gonna, in the chat, how many, so we've got one person has actually tried building automated, so not automated tests, tests in the automated test framework using the example of a catalog item, for example. We've got this one here. I'll just say try it in the service portal. So if we imagine what we want to do in our test is we just want to go through ordering a provision a database item. And then once it's ordered, we want to validate that all the correct fields are mandatory, read-only, visible, all that kind of thing. So normally I'd come in here, fill out a field like who's the primary contact, the cost center, what is the business purpose, we just say special projects, and order it. Order, check out. It's done. And then we might want to check in the back end of ServiceNow. Open it up. And just do some validation on the form, check which UI actions are visible, check which fields and variables are mandatory, etc. So if I wanted to do that in the automated test framework, go tests, new, we'll call this provision a database. And through the GUI, I'll go test steps, add test step. We want service catalog and service portal. So the first thing we did, we want to open a catalog item. Wait for the form to load, service portal, and we had provision a database, submit.
So do you typically not set up a user, like either create a user or impersonate?
That's a very good point. To start off a test, it's advisable not to use an admin account. It's better to use an end user. So you can use the create a user to set up a throwaway user that then gets impersonated, or if you've already got like a test set of users, you could do that. In this case, I'm just going to use impersonate quickly just because it's quicker to set up. And just for the purposes of this demonstration, going to hit submit. It's not really good practice to use impersonate anymore. From New York onwards, it's suggested to use create a user step instead. Just because it's quicker, just going to change the order of this one to 0. All right, what's the next thing that I did? I set variable values. Load. I do have a plugin open that shows me all the field names. It's called SNC Utils. It's really helpful as a admin if you're wondering why I've got all the field names there on the side.
I was curious, definitely.
It's a really, really good utility. So I populated business purpose with, I'll put special projects. Cost center, I'll just put in an arbitrary value here. Cost center and primary contact. Right, so that's 3 fields. Catalog item, set variable values. Noted that all the variables had a particular state. They were all visible, but for this we'll kind of make it simple. They were all mandatory. Set values, check the variable state. Then we're going to submit it or order it. And then we want to open the request item. So you kind of need a little bit of knowledge on how to write queries in ServiceNow. Record query.
Just out of curiosity, if you don't mind, when do you choose submit versus using a UI action?
In this case, it's just ordering a catalog item. I can cover that in a bit later. I'll just quickly get this one through.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail you.
That's cool. Questions are always welcome. Record query. So one of the really cool things about ATF is you can make your queries based on the outputs of other test steps. So the order catalog item has an output that gives you the request number, but I want to get the request item. Sorry, I want the request item, which has a request, which is the output of this. So we'll just leave it at that for now. You'll see it doesn't take too long, but it still does take time. And if you've got a big system with lots of catalog items, for example, this is just like a very basic one, just to go through the notion of impersonating, opening it up, setting values, checking values, ordering it, and then opening the requested item. So I'm just going to run this test. Waiting for a test to run. So we've got the execution frame here that's just opening the item, populating the fields. Hopefully I've done this all correctly. Order now, order. Waiting for a test to run. Now it should do the server-side component of the test, unless it's already done that. Cool, it's already done that successfully. And then it's deleted the record, so it doesn't dirty up your system. Lots of records. So if I wanted to do further tests on the request item, for example, if I wanted to do a UI action on this, we go to, where are we, form. We can say UI action visibility. And type in, let's just say, check the update. Now there's two update buttons. There's update button on existing records and one for multiple update forms. So that's the one
So
we
is
want.
that feature part of that util you were talking about, SNG?
So I haven't quite got to the utility bit. This is just kind of a sense
No,
of
the describing, because you had something that described the visibility of action when you went and clicked in there. So when
oh no, that's out of the box.
because when I no.
Yep, sorry.
So when oh, that's weird. Okay, because I never see when you were just looking before, you said there was two UI actions, right? And you said one.
Yeah.
And you had something that explained more of what they were. In my system, all I ever see is just the UI action of save. So I see like save 5 times or whatever, and you had a whole bunch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Is that part of that SN utils thing that you were talking about, or?
I don't think
so you have it actually describes what it is, instead of just saying save. And when I see it, all I ever see is save.
Yeah. I can't actually remember. I might have done so, just because, yeah, that's one of the, it is quite annoying when there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 saves and you don't know which save is which.
Which is also annoying because I have the ability to do ATF tests, but I'm not a full admin in the system. So.
Oh, okay. That might be why, because I am
me.
an admin. Yeah, it's probably just because you don't have access to that little bit of
Thank you.
text. Anyway, so you can see like it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it does take a little bit of time. So I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I didn't have to do that at all? So I created this ATF recorder. So I just created this test manually to give everyone a sense of how long it takes and the kind of technical knowledge that you need to know. You need to have a little bit. And as the audience, sorry, what was your name?
Joe.
Joe, as Joe was just saying, it does kind of require a little bit of technical knowledge to be able to build it up, but not if you can just record your actions. So I've just favorited the ATF recorder here. This will just record using the default settings. Just to be sure, actually, I'll stop recording and I'll use the simple level of recording. So we'll go in our provision our database item again, try and service portal. This is where the magic happens. All right, so I've got a message pops up that's just alerting me that I'm recording this, and this is going to go into an ATF test. Primary contact, able, cost center, customer support. Let's go with KTLO. Order the item. That's just telling me that the form snapshot has been added to the test. Check out the item. Let's get the reference number for this. Come back into ServiceNow. Go searching for RTM. Again, just a little reminder telling us that we're recording. I'm just going to save the record now to make a snapshot of it. Not actually going to change any fields at this time. I could if I wanted. Actually, let's just add a CI to this. Now I'm going to save the record. So one of the limitations I did have building this is I wasn't always able to reliably determine which UI action was selected. So I just prompt the user with a little reminder saying, is this the button that you clicked? So in this case, save is the one that I clicked. Okay. This only happens if you, with particular UI actions. It doesn't happen with all of them. It's just a technical limitation around being able to determine which button was clicked, because in writing this, I try to use as much out of the box API as possible, and there just wasn't any API there to reliably trace the UI action every time. So I've just added a configuration item there. I'm going to scroll down to catalog tasks. Come through.
We have Mark C who put some items in the chat.
Yep, that's very true as well. You can configure those variables to add the ref autocompleter attributes as well. I'm not sure if in Joe's case it was ACL not being admin or that I added them in there. Can't remember personally. So I want to run through like an end-to-end. I've ordered an item. I want to change something on the request item, and I want to go through and close all the related tasks and make sure that I can. So this tests, essentially testing that the workflow works as expected, and that the form state, the UI actions that are visible, all that kind of stuff is as expected. And close the task. And I might do a final save on the request item just to capture the state on that one. All right, so that took like probably a minute to do. And now I've got a automated test here, and all the test steps have been generated automatically, including impersonation. So I've got impersonate, open catalog item, set variable values, KTLO, able tutor, customer support, variable state validation. Now this test did not exist before. I did not write this ahead of time. This is not staged. This was generated just then. As you can see, I just put in KTLO, able tutor, customer support. You can see the configuration item there. That was the one that I entered. And you can see the timestamp there, 9:36:06, my local time. That's the exact time that I did this. So this is not staged. This was all generated based on what I just did. So the ordering of the item, the record query to open the request item, it's recognized that the record that I opened was related to the one that I ordered. I opened it. It checks for every UI action that was visible. Now this would take forever if you wanted to exhaustively work out yourself every UI action that was visible. This determines it automatically. Knows the update, delete, GitHub export, save, follow on live feed, new, edit, and new, which those are like related list UI actions. It's recognized that they were all visible. Can you imagine how long that would take to do manually? Setting the field value of the configuration item. And then this just being a simple test, it's more testing for the negative. So it doesn't test that everything is visible. It just tests what isn't visible. So you wouldn't have even noticed that additional comments wasn't visible. That's a very hard test for someone to write manually because they don't know what's not there, but the recorder does, which was read-only. Variable state validation, just checking that the variables are all mandatory as well. But I click save, and it also recognizes that the task that I opened was related to the request item that I already opened. It opens that record. Again, it does the UI action check, it does the field state validation, clicks close task, and then it goes to the other task, checks the UI action, field state, and again, opening the request item through to the end. So that's 27 steps. Probably would have taken me half an hour to an hour to do that manually, and I just did it in about a minute automatically. And just to prove as well that it works, I'm going to run the test and show that it passes. Now it's doing the first bit that I wrote the test for manually, populating those variables, order now, order confirmation.
I posted a quick question that is coming from the external community. So as Rohit wanted to know, is it possible to do that?
Ooh. I haven't tried to do that myself. There's parts of it that you could do. You could, from a unit testing perspective, you could probably, if you've abstracted some of your mail script out into a script include, you could use the server-side scripts in Jasmine to do unit testing on those scripts. In Orlando, ServiceNow did just add a test step for outbound mail, for checking that outbound mail has been sent. So one of the features I want to add to this would be to, at the end of the test, just query the email log for every record that was touched and every email notification that was triggered, and automatically generate the outbound emails there. But I think that's more of a check of, did it send, not so much did it have the right content, did the content look right? Because I know emails is a very time-consuming thing to test, but I think at this stage it still requires a manual glance at the emails to make sure that you don't have like an error message where your mail script is, as an example. So I think in that time it's just gone through and passed. So this solves a lot of the problems I was having with the person needing to be technical. Now they don't need to be technical. You can just sit down with your testers and say, hey, when you're doing your testing, hit start record. And then when you're done, hit stop. And then you've got all your tests already generated. So I'll show the same test I prepared earlier with a actions. This is an actions only one. So it just shows like I impersonated, I opened, I set values, I ordered it, I opened a record, I clicked an action. It doesn't worry about the field state and the UI action visibility because you don't always care about that depending on what you're testing. And then the exhaustive version, which does everything, as in what's visible, what's not read-only, what's mandatory. Looking at the UI actions, it not only does visible, but it also does not visible. Same with the field state validation. So it's a lot more exhaustive version of exactly the same.
So
test.
does this ever run into problems with when you're doing, especially you're doing both what is there and what isn't there? If sometimes things like dates or when you did it relative to something else can affect, especially in change management. I mean, change management has a lot of variabilities in our case, especially where depending on what your assignment group is, your and your risk and your other things that get dynamically generated based on the CI or some other things that or even just how soon you did it versus how far in the past you did it.
Yeah, dates are always a tricky one because like if you set the plan start and plan end to like the day that you're running through the test, then the next day it's in the past and it becomes invalid. So it is quite tricky. Like this tool doesn't mean you'll never have to modify a test step or create test steps again. It just speeds up the time to
it's
create
really awesome. I was just curious.
a framework for the test. Yeah. So what it does do to try, I guess it only captures the fields that you change yourself. It doesn't capture every single value on the field, because then you do run into that date issue with fields like opened and created and that kind of thing. So it's just about being mindful when you're running through this to set values that you know aren't going to screw up the test if you try and pass it at a later date. So I do have those modes of testing as well, because sometimes exhaustive is simply too much and it just picks up too much. It just depends, I guess, what you're looking for. If you want an exhaustive regression, like you might do this just before an upgrade, just so you can immediately highlight. Because I know, for example, the last upgrade I did, some change UI actions became deprecated and some new ones were created. And using this tool, you can immediately see when it comes to the UI visibility that some things have dropped off. Some things become inactive, for example. So got those three modes of testing there. That pretty much covers it. There's some properties really as well, where you select the capture level, which tables automatically get recorded, which fields it uses to base similar record queries off, and just all the templates that I use to generate the different sort of types of tests, whether it's a new record or an existing record, or you're recording an action and whatnot. So that's so the cool thing, this is all available on Share for free for everyone. So it's just on Share, called Regress. I've got a few versions. The latest version, 0.994, has just introduced the catalog item recording, and it has instructions on how to set it up. There are some things that need to be done to get it working in Service Portal, a few simple steps, but otherwise it's fairly standard there. So that's on Share. And yeah, just go for it, download it, put it in your subprod instance, play around with it. It's not perfect, but it does a pretty good job. And most of the time when you replay your test, it will pass. But keep in mind that you will always need some level of test creation. It just really sets up the framework and makes it a lot easier to create the tests quickly.
Jenny asked, can you use ATF Recorder for custom scope applications?
Yeah, as far as I know, applications and custom scopes should work. However, I can't say I've exhaustively tested. My testing has just been, for this app, has mainly been on out-of-the-box ServiceNow instances that are quite simple and have low levels of customization. But feel free to download it and try it and let me know. I don't see why it wouldn't work. All right, I'll just pop back into the presentation. Bear with me. Why don't I share the screen again? Oh, come on, Zoom. It's disappeared on me. All right, share screen, presentation. All right, so that's the demo. So just highlighting the key challenges it solves is you don't have to be technical to write the tests. You just have to hit record, do your actions, and then hit stop. The test steps are created for you, so it greatly minimizes the setup time required to use ATF. And number 3 is because developers don't need to write the tests. They're freed up. The testers can just record the things that they've done, and it creates the regression tests for you as you go. So I'll go to the chat, see if we have any other questions. Does anyone have any further questions they would like to ask?
I'm also checking on the community. Feel free to unmute yourself if you have a question, or if you're just too shy, just type away.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. So I've got a link in the presentation. However, that probably won't help you terribly because it's recorded on YouTube. So I'll put these links in the community post, which will have the recording for this session. Also give some links to some of the coding blogs I've written, and I did write a little blog about my journey creating this tool. So I'll put all those up on the community, and I'll just put the link in the chat right now as well. I can copy this link. What's it doing now?
Oh, that's interesting. Blank screen.
Is it just showing a white screen? Or I just paste in, that's the link there. So I encourage people to download it and let me know what bugs there are. It's still it's a pretty new application. I've only just added that, the service portal recording. It's very basic in what it does, but it does enough, I think. So just if you find any bugs, or if you have any feature requests or anything, feel free to post on the share page. Give it a good review as well if you liked what you saw.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing.
Wonderful.
Not a problem. Sorry that I've run around 24 minutes over, and I actually cut down the presentation on what it originally was.
Wonderful. We'll just make sure that those links are posted on that community link. And since I don't think they came through on the chat, so please, Paul, just make sure that you just get them onto that.
Hold on. From me privately. Not sure if it went. Sorry, it didn't go to everyone. Let me do that again.
There you go.
There we go.
Wonderful. Thank you all. Really appreciate it. We'll see you in the community, and have a great knowledge.